Motivation feels like a clean start, like a new version of you walks in, grabs your shoulders and says, "We're doing it now." For a moment, everything feels possible, and that feeling is addictive. Ethan chased that feeling for years. Not because he loved hard work, but because motivation made him feel forgiven. It turned guilt into hope without asking him to prove anything yet. That's why it feels so good. Motivation is the reward before the work. Your brain celebrates the idea of effort, not the effort itself, so it feels like progress without pain. This is the story of Ethan, a man who didn't need more advice. He had the apps, the saved videos, the routines, the quotes on the wall. He didn't lack knowledge, he lacked a system. On good mornings, he would sit up fast, drink water, and write goals with confident handwriting, like bold words could build a bold life. He felt unstoppable before he did anything. He loved that version of himself, the version who trains early, works deep, stays calm, and never negotiates. In his mind, that man was real. In reality, it lasted until inconvenience showed up. Around late morning, the wave would fade. The same gym felt farther. The same task felt heavier. Nothing changed outside him, but his inner energy dropped, and his standards dropped with it. His mind would whisper, "Not now, then, later, then, you deserve a break." And later always sounded smart, because later never had deadlines, never had stress, never had doubt. At night, regret would settle in quietly, like a stone in his chest. He'd scroll to numb it and promise himself tomorrow, like tomorrow was a clean reset that never failed. The pattern repeated for years. Big starts, small finishes, endless restarts. The worst part wasn't failure once. It was failing the same way, with the same excuses, on different days. One evening, Ethan sat in his car after work and didn't turn the key. He stared at the dashboard, feeling angry in a silent way, not at life, but at the gap between intention and action. He thought, I can show up for everyone else. Deadlines, meetings, bills, responsibilities. But when it came to his goals, he acted like they were optional, like they were a hobby. That's when he saw the ugly truth. He treated discipline like a tool he could pick up when he felt good, not a standard he lived by when he felt bad. He was building on moods. Motivation made the trap worse, because motivation feels like movement. It lifts your heart, sharpens your mind, and you confuse emotion with change. You feel different, so you assume you are different. Ethan remembered the first time motivation hit him hard. A story, a transformation, music rising, words landing. He felt tears, not because the video changed his life, but because it made his life feel possible. He went to bed thinking, I'm done being this person. But the next morning, he woke up as the same person, in the same room, with the same habits waiting. Motivation left. Reality stayed. That's what motivation really is. A visitor, not a builder. It loves beginnings because beginnings are clean. Beginnings let you feel like a hero without facing the middle. And the middle is where character is revealed. The middle is repetition. The boring day. The day nobody sees. The day results don't show up. The day effort feels invisible. Motivation hates invisible effort because invisible effort doesn't feed the ego. Ethan didn't want to admit it, but his motivation was tied to identity. When he felt motivated, he felt like a good person. When he didn't, he felt like a failure. Feelings became a scoreboard. That's why motivation feels good. It doesn't just energize you, it clears your guilt. It says, you're not behind, you're just about to start. And if you keep starting, you never face finishing. One night, Ethan wrote a sentence that made his stomach tighten. I don't need motivation. I need tolerance. Tolerance for boredom. Tolerance for discomfort. Tolerance for slow progress, without applause. He looked at his calendar and saw the cycle clearly. Monday hype, Tuesday effort, Wednesday dip, Thursday excuses, Friday reset fantasy. His life wasn't moving forward. It was spinning with better lighting. The next morning, he did something unusual. He didn't search for inspiration. He didn't watch anything. He let the morning feel plain, because most of life is plain, and you still have to show up. Without motivation, he felt exposed, ordinary, unprotected. He sat on the edge of the bed and realized he was waiting for a feeling to give him permission to act. Like action needed approval. That was the trap. When you rely on motivation, you train yourself to move only when it feels good. And when you move only when it feels good, discomfort starts to feel like danger. Your mind begins to protect you from the work. It calls discipline too much and distraction self-care. It turns your goals into threats and your comfort into a religion, quietly, daily. Ethan stood up anyway, not with fire, not with excitement, with a decision. He walked to the kitchen, drank water slowly, and felt nothing special. That was the point. Act without reward. Then he did a tiny workout he could repeat. 10 push-ups, slow and clean. His mind tried to laugh at him. "That's nothing," he answered. "Nothing is what I did yesterday." He wasn't chasing intensity anymore. He was chasing evidence. Because discipline is built on evidence. Small promises kept, small actions repeated, small proof that your words still mean something. He noticed something strange. The day didn't become easier, but he felt more anchored. Like his mind stopped floating and finally touched the ground. He wasn't inspired. He was stable. Stability felt boring. And that scared him because he had trained himself to believe excitement equals progress. If it didn't feel dramatic, he assumed it didn't count. That afternoon, he felt the familiar dip again. The moment his brain begged for a quick hit. Scrolling, sugar, comfort, anything. He felt the pull like a magnet, subtle but strong. In that moment, he finally understood why motivation never lasts. Motivation is a high, and the brain always returns to baseline. When you build on a high, baseline feels like failure. He saw motivation like weather. Sunshine feels amazing, but you can't build a house out of sunlight. Discipline is the architecture. It stands when the weather changes, and weather always changes. Ethan created a simple rule: no 0 days. Not perfect days, not productive days. Just no 0 days, because 0 days train your brain to quit like it's normal. He wrote his minimum standard on a card. 5 minutes of movement. 5 minutes of focused work. 5 minutes of planning. He made it almost too easy, because the goal wasn't to impress himself. The goal was to stop disappearing. Because when you vanish for days, you don't just lose progress, you lose trust. And self-trust is the fuel most people are missing. He learned the real function of a minimum standard. It's not what transforms your life in one day. It's what prevents your life from collapsing in one day when mood, stress, and chaos arrive. The next morning, motivation still didn't show up. But Ethan showed up. He hit his minimum, then did one extra small task. Not because he felt amazing, but because he respected the contract. That's when the lesson became clear. Motivation feels good because it makes you feel in control. Discipline works because it creates control. One is the feeling of power. The other is the practice of power. After a week, the shift wasn't in his body or his bank account. It was in his self-respect. He stopped needing the perfect mood to begin because beginning became normal. He also noticed a quieter enemy: comfort. Comfort doesn't scream, it whispers. It says, "You've had a long day." It says, "Just this once." Comfort is not evil. It's just expensive. Ethan started asking one question before small choices. Is this relief or is this respect? Relief feels good now. Respect feels good later. One is a sugar rush. The other is a foundation. He realized motivation often pushes people toward relief. Discipline trains people to choose respect. That's why discipline looks boring. It doesn't entertain emotions. It trains identity. 2 weeks later, Ethan had a terrible day. Stress, mistakes, low energy. The old pattern came back like a familiar home. Skip everything, restart Monday, pretend the gap doesn't matter. He almost listened. Then he looked at his minimum standard card and felt something stronger than motivation. Accountability. The quiet kind that doesn't negotiate, the kind that cares about tomorrow. He did his minimum while feeling miserable. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't beautiful, but it was honest. It proved the goal was not dependent on mood, and that changed everything. That night, he wrote another sentence. Motivation is emotional. Standards are mechanical. And mechanical is good because machines run even when you're not excited. He built a tiny tool for bad moments and named it the 60-second switch. Stand up. 1 deep breath. Name the next tiny action. Start for 1 minute before thinking. The switch wasn't magical. It was practical. It moved him out of paralysis and into motion. Because feelings often follow action more than action follows feelings. He began to see motivation as a spark, not an engine. A match can start a fire, but it can't keep the house warm for months. He needed fuel, not hype. Discipline became that fuel, but not as punishment. As identity. As a repeated decision. I do what I said I would do. Simple, not dramatic, and that simplicity made it powerful. He stopped hunting the perfect routine and started building a loop. Cue, action, reward. Cue was time. Action was minimum standard. Reward was the checkmark and the self-trust it created. Self-trust was the real reward. Not excitement, not adrenaline. Self-trust is quiet but heavy. It changes how you walk into a room because you stop lying to yourself. Ethan noticed his mind got calmer. Not because life got easier, but because he stopped debating all day. When you rely on motivation, you negotiate every task. When you rely on standards, you reduce decisions. He wrote one more line. Ready is a feeling. Consistent is a skill. Skills don't vanish because you had a bad morning. Skills show up because you trained them. He also saw a truth most people ignore. Motivation feels good because it gives you the reward before the work. And when the reward comes first, the work starts to feel pointless. Your brain says, why suffer if we already feel accomplished? That's why motivation fades. It completes the story in your head too early, then leaves you with real work and no fuel. The next time motivation hit him, he smiled, but he didn't worship it. He used it like a bonus. He did the work faster, added a little extra, and still kept the minimum standard as the contract. He treated motivation like good weather. Enjoy it. Use it. Don't build your life around it. Because the day the weather changes is the day most people disappear. Months passed, and Ethan's life looked different in quiet ways. Not because he became superhuman, but because he became predictable in the right direction. Predictable actions create predictable results. He didn't always feel confident. He didn't always feel strong, but he kept moving, and movement created confidence the honest way, the kind that comes from proof. One night, he found an old page full of bold goals from a previous new start. He didn't feel shame. He felt clarity. He saw how many times he tried to leap instead of climb. He wrote a rule beneath it. Small steps daily beat big jumps monthly. Discipline doesn't change you by force. It changes you by repetition, and repetition is what the brain believes. Ethan realized why people stay stuck for years. They keep waiting to feel like the person they want to become. But identity comes after actions, not before them. You don't act disciplined because you are disciplined. You become disciplined because you act. That simple order flips everything, and most people never learn it. He stopped saying, I need motivation. He started saying, I need to show up. And showing up became something he could do regardless of mood, because mood was no longer the boss. Hard days still existed. Days when distractions felt warm, when quitting sounded reasonable. But he stopped looking for reasons. He started honoring standards, even when he didn't like them. Standards feel harsh at first because they remove your favorite escape. They remove the option to blame feelings. They remove the story where you're a victim of your emotions. But standards also give freedom. Freedom from constant negotiation. Freedom from self-betrayal. Freedom from restarting your life every Monday like a broken tradition. One morning, Ethan realized he hadn't watched motivational clips in weeks. Not because he was above them, but because he didn't need them. His life wasn't powered by hype anymore. He remembered how motivation used to control him. Lift him, drop him, then punish him with guilt. He called it a roller coaster he paid for with his future. Discipline wasn't a roller coaster. It was a road, boring, steady, real. Roads don't make you scream, but they take you somewhere if you keep walking. He looked at his calendar and saw something he had never built before. A chain. Not perfect days, but consistent days. Quiet days that change your life while you're busy living. He understood the entry fee. Motivation promises transformation without pain. Discipline accepts pain as the price. And after you pay the price enough times, pain becomes training, not punishment. That's the lesson. Motivation is a mood. Moods come and go. Discipline is a decision. Decisions become identity when repeated. And identity is what carries you when you feel nothing. If you've been waiting for motivation to come back, understand this. It will come back, and it will leave again. The real question is whether you'll move when it's gone. Build a minimum standard that works on your worst day. Build a 60-second switch for low moments. Build a system that doesn't depend on the perfect feeling, because perfect feelings are rare. Start small, but start daily. Let the proof stack up. Let the chain form. Your brain doesn't change from speeches. It changes from evidence you can't argue with. Motivation feels good, but it was never designed to last. It spikes, it fades, it tempts you to wait. Discipline is designed to last because it's simple, repeatable, and honest. Ethan didn't become a different man overnight. He became a man who could rely on his own words again. And that quiet reliability was more powerful than any hype. He stopped asking for permission from his mood. He started acting like the person he wanted to be, even when he felt ordinary, because ordinary days are the ones that build a life. He learned to respect the boring days, because boring days are real. They shape you when nobody watches, when nothing feels new, when the only reward is the promise kept. And that's why motivation feels good, but never lasts. It gives you the reward too early. Discipline delays the reward, earns it, and makes it yours in a way motivation never could. Every story reshapes your mindset.